Hello folks, and welcome to an episode of After Hours Woodworking. I'm Chad Stanton, a professional woodworker and a contractor, and on this show what I talk about is what I'm working on in my shop, as well as I answer some viewer email questions, and we talk about different products. So, if you're aware, I wasn't on last week because I was actually in Atlanta, Georgia for the big IWF show. It comes around every 2 years. And so this is my first time going down there, and what an experience. Now, I have to say, as most of you know, I'm kind of a hand tool guy. And yes, I build furniture for a living, so I do have power tools. But these were power tools on a magnified large level. There were machines there that were probably 20 feet tall. It was incredible and also insane. So I really wasn't into watching a bunch of computers run and stuff getting milled out. But nonetheless, there were still a lot of vendors that I was able to meet and talk to, and really had a nice time with a lot of these folks. I was in the Craig booth to check out what they had going on. Rycon, Joe Taylor over there at Rycon. I've bumped into Joe at several different shows, and they got some pretty cool stuff. They had for the bandsaw, essentially it's like a variable speed adjuster for it, so you can change the speed of the bandsaw. And this actually plays a big role in bandsaws because depending on what you're cutting, the feed rate and the speed, it makes a difference. The number of teeth you have on your blade, if you're trying to resaw something thick. So a lot of this is pre-programmed in there, and you just kind of hit the buttons and you're set to go. So, and it can be adapted to any Rycon bandsaw. So I have an older one, and if I wanted it, it would fit right on this. And at this point in time, I don't think it's for me, but nonetheless, it's cool to see stuff that's coming out. I also got to meet the folks over there at Crystalac. I've been talking with them for quite a while, and was able to meet them, and we had dinner together, and that was a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, they had a small booth, but it was a busy booth. A lot of people going through it, checking out their different stains and finishes. I'm telling you, some of the stuff was really cool. So that was fun. I got to meet the owner of McFeely's, which is a large fastening company. So if you're buying screws either in bulk or in particular very specific screws. So for example, I've done different decks and composite decking over the years. And one of the problems with composite decking is as you put that screw in, it kind of mushrooms out the composite as it sinks in. And they have screws that towards the end of the head, it's like reverse threaded. And so it makes really nice, clean holes as you countersink the screw in. You don't have that mushrooming or anything. So they got a whole bunch of stuff, and they sent me some clips and fasteners for like doing a floating shelf. So I'll be playing with that and see how that goes. Also stopped in the booth of the Panto router. You've probably seen this online before, a couple other videos, but what's super cool with this is it does the mortise and the tenon same time. Essentially, it's the same setup. So you put one in, and you make the mortise with it, and then you take it out and you put the next piece in, and it makes the tenon for it. And you can fine-tune that adjustment really easy with their system. It was kind of neat. So I had some fun checking that out and seeing how it worked. And it's one thing to see the stuff online. It's another thing to see it up front and get to play with it. So that was really cool. Also, too, Next Wave. I stopped in the Next Wave booth mostly because of Rick Frazier, who's a viewer of the show. He has Silverback Woodworking there, if you want to check it out, where he does different projects with the CNC. I've never been a huge fan of the CNC. In fact, in the beginning, I used to defy the CNC. I thought it was the worst thing to happen to woodworking. And then I realized it's a tool just like any other tool. And I think especially the CNC is great for the millennial generation that's used to pushing buttons. I think this is going to lead right into a nice transition for them to get into woodworking because it's mostly computer related. But when I was talking with, and I forget his name, I want to say Chris, but as I was talking with the folks there at Next Wave, they helped dispel some common misconceptions I thought about the CNC. For example, I thought there's no reason for me to have a CNC because that's production work, and what I do is like a one-off on everything. And then they were showing me some of the stuff that they had made, or some of the stuff that people made and sent to them, that they are one-offs. There would be no reason to make a whole bunch of these things. And that was kind of an eye-opener for me, because I thought, oh yeah, maybe that could do what I have to do faster, but just, one time. The other thing, too, is I was like, I'm not really a computer guy. I don't have all the ability to the programming, and I don't have the patience to sit there and, make it do what it's got to do. They had a machine, and it was really cool. So they had a pocket knife, and it was scanning with a laser the pocket knife, and it was feeding the information to the computer and then to the CNC, and then it was cutting it out. It was cutting out a pocket knife on the CNC from scanning it. Now that I can handle. So they talked about me coming down to their place and doing a walkthrough with them and learning a little bit more about the CNC and the future of the CNC. So that sounded kind of fun. I don't know when I'll get to that. It was just talk. But nonetheless, it was very eye-opening for me. So all these companies I mentioned, I'll put the links down below if you want to go to their websites. I also got to meet several people that I talked to online. Carl Jacobson, Donnie Carter, and Scott Grove. These are woodworkers themselves. Like, Carl Jacobson, most people know Carl Jacobson is a really good turner. He's got his own YouTube show doing that. Donnie Carter, he's got the Green Woodworker podcast show where he interviews woodworkers of all ranges. And then Scott Grove is an amazing woodworker. Most people probably haven't heard of him. I'm going to put his website down below as well because you got to see his work. It's some great stuff, and I really enjoyed talking with Scott. We talked at quite length. And then, on top of seeing and meeting those guys, I had two fellas that it just blew my mind. Johnny and Jacob Wheelot. And they watched this show and they heard me say that I was going to be at the IWF show. So they came down to hopefully run into me. And I'm telling you, it's a crapshoot if you're going to find someone there because it is so big. There's like 40,000 people going through there, and the odds of bumping into someone you know. Anyhow, they found me. And so I talked with them quite a bit. It was a lot of fun. I think I was more thrilled to meet them than they were to meet me. But nonetheless, it was a really good time. And I thank all you viewers for watching the show. So let's see. That's what I did down there at the IWF. Coming back, this week it's been a busy week. I'm working on the shop, getting that ready. So I went to, if you followed me on Instagram, I went down to Valley City where my buddy Brian lives, and Brian has everything. I mean, anything you can think of, this guy had it. And I was talking that I got to start putting the plywood up on the ceiling of the shop. And so he's got a lift that does it. So I drove to Valley City, And Brian's got like 42 acres of land, so we went out four-wheeling through his property, and then I came back with the lift. Did that all on Tuesday, and the lift makes life so much easier. I also had two new customers contact me this week. One wants a Windsor-style bench made, and that I'm really excited to do. And the other one was a fireplace mantle. Customer bought the mantle, got it home, and then realized it's too big, width-wise, too big, height-wise. So it's my job to be cutting that down. And I will be filming the process. It's going to be one of those fast build videos, but I am filming the process of cutting this mantle down. It's actually going to be kind of an interesting challenge for me because there's some crucial design to it that I want to be able to keep in there, and that might be difficult with the new dimensions. But anyhow, that's what I'll be working with that. And I also had a older regular customer give me a call, bought a new house, and wants a couple of custom built-in units made small, but nonetheless wants it done. So I'll hopefully be trying to squeeze that in with all the other jobs I got going that are unfinished. So Dennis and Les. Well, I didn't make it out to Les's house this week. Les is home, still not doing well. His immune system is pretty low, and I didn't go over because I'm getting a cold myself. I think of all the handshaking down at the show, and Atlanta's a big city, so I'm touching all the handrails and so on. I think I got something. So I didn't want to give it to Les in his condition, so I didn't go over, but Dennis went over. Dennis is continuing work on that high boy, and Dennis and I are going to try and get over there another day this week, if I can get over this cold, to help get those done, because Les is having trouble every day. Speaking of Dennis, though, I was at Dennis's house, and Dennis finished making his latest workbench, and I've been just a little bit helping him with it, kind of like turning pieces over and lifting stuff. But Dennis has 3 different style workbenches in his shop, and he was telling me that this latest one that he built, he thinks is the best workbench by far. And I thought that would make a great video, him explaining the 2 other benches, the pros and cons of them, and then how this new bench kind of is like the one bench to rule them all, if you will, and why he feels this is the ultimate workbench. So I thought I might do a video coming up fairly soon on that. All right, so that's what I had going on this week. As you can tell, it was pretty busy. So I got some emails in. And so Gary Elfstrand, Gary was making some frames, and he was doing mitered cuts for the frames. And as we mentioned before on this, miter joints are a very weak joint. You just try and glue it. It's all end grain, so it soaks in. You can, do nails like most people do for door casings and stuff, but nails aren't strong, especially if you got something in a frame with a weight behind it. So he did a combination on some of them with dowels, and he did some with splines. And he asked me what I thought was better. Now, I think that the spline is going to be the stronger joint, and reason being is on a miter joint, when you're putting the dowels in, well, the dowels are round, and they don't tend to stay round. So even though the hole you drilled was round and the dowel fits tight, then in time it's going to shrink or it's going to change. And even with glue, I think sometimes that shrinking can break the bond of the glue. The other thing too is that wood expands and contracts. So because the dowel is going across that wood as it expands and contracts, I think it's going to, over many, many years, loosen itself. Where the spline the spline is running pretty much like the same direction as the mitered pieces, and so as the wood expands and contract, that spline will expand and contract with it because it's all wood. It's all flat and pretty much going the same direction. So personally, I think the spline would do a nicer job, but I know dowels are fast and easy. So hopefully that gives you some thoughts on that there, Gary. Bill Crispin. Bill had a, this wasn't so much as a question as it was a comment, and I thought it was probably a good thing to point out. He had a router bit that came loose on him, and I thought I would just pass on one little thing of caution about router bits, so let me grab one and tell you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I got 3 different router bits here, and what I wanted to point out was take a look real close at your router bit where the stem comes up to the actual cutters. All right, so now this is a rather cheap one, and it comes up and it's straight, it's flush. It goes right into the bit, and the reason I say this is a cheaper one is because right there, that's where all the pressure is being applied as you're putting your work piece into it, and that stress and that can crack. So some of the nicer router bits, as it comes up, it flares a little, just a little, but it flares a little, and what that does is that gives it more beef there, more strength, but that there is where the problem lies. Because now as you put this in your router, and if you let that bottom out all the way down, well, that collet can be pinching on the flared part. And as you start spinning it, and so it's not really gripping on the whole stem or the whole shaft, it's just gripping on that flare part, and as you're putting pressure into it and it vibrates, it can come loose, and now nothing is holding that. It can come out. Very dangerous. So what I usually recommend people to do is put it in, let it bottom out, and then lift it up just a little bit, like a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch. Lift it up a little bit, and then tighten it down. That should hold it in there. Even some of the nicer router bits, I believe this is Whiteside router bit, what they'll do is they have a large like step or block to it. So if this does bottom out, I don't have to worry about that flare part. It's much larger in diameter right there, which makes it an incredibly strong bit. So, okay, there's a little bit of caution on that there. Let's see. So Philip Quinn was doing a like a tool chest or a treasure chest box, and we were talking about different finishes for it, and I suggested to him to not put any stain or finish on the inside of the chest. And this is something that I've come to do over the years. I used to, on drawers and boxes, I would at least put a finish on the inside, and what I found was that, you know, most of the time, drawers or boxes, they stay closed. And when you open it up then or pull that drawer out, you've got that wave of finish smell, you know, hitting you. And it can do that for years. So I know some of the waterborne products don't have as much of a smell, so that might be an option for you. But for the most part, I just make it a rule not to finish the insides of projects, cabinets, doors, boxes, drawers, so on. So that's my thoughts on that. Of course, do what you feel is best, but that smell seems to never go away, in my opinion. All right, so I don't have a product this week for Should You Own It, but Frank Porter had a really good suggestion for me. And so we're going to occasionally spotlight this section, and we're going to call it This Old Tool. The first tool we're going to have on this segment of This Old Tool is this tenon cutter. Now, you probably saw me use this in the last video, the Asian style bench, and I had several people write in and ask me, what is that thing and how does it work? So this has a patent date on it of 1878, but I also found a date stamped on it that said June 5th, 1900. So these were widely manufactured by different companies, and on the bottom of it you can see it has a blade right here, a cutter, and then I have a lock nut here, and when I loosen that lock nut, this dial allows me to open and close the diameter of this anywhere from 1/4 inch up to 1 1/4 inches. It also has a depth stop to it, and I forget what I had this set at, 1 3/8 inches or something, but that will allow me to automatically stop once I get down to the depth of the tenon I want. So I have just a square piece of stock here. It's roughly 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. You can see I have a 1-inch circle going around it, and there's no way this tool is going to start on that. So I have to do a couple of things. First, I want to knock these corners down, and I'm just going to use a rasp real quick just to get it started. All right. The other thing is it's still not going to fit. So I have to start with another tool in front of it, and that tool is this one here. And as you can see, it's cone-shaped, has a blade in the side, and as I use this, what it's going to do is basically going to sharpen it like a pencil. So it's going to make it come to a point, which is not what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve a straight, round tenon, not a point. But nonetheless, I need to start using this to get it down roughly close to that 1-inch pencil line. So let's see what it does here. Okay, you can see it's working, but it's really loud on the ears. So what I like to do many times is to help quiet that, because that blade is cutting the end grain fibers, and it just squeaks like mad. I have some denatured alcohol here, and I like the denatured alcohol because it wets the wood, makes it quieter, but the alcohol evaporates, unlike water, so I don't rust my tools. Okay, that's pretty close. The tenon cutter also has to go into a brace. It won't fit into a regular drill chuck. It needs to go into a brace. Tighten that up. Hopefully that's small enough to get started. Yeah. Okay. And as I turn it, that blade is cutting all the fibers. And you can tell it's still a workout. It's not easy. Especially, too, because I've got so much on the side there. But you can see that it makes a pretty good square but round tenon. So there you go. The first installment of This Old Tool. Okay, well, tune in next week. On Mondays, we have What Are You Doing?, where we spotlight what's going on in your shop. Of course, Wednesday is back here again for another After Hours Woodworking. And hopefully this Friday, I'll have a video for you, the world's best and cheapest jig for your shop. So stay tuned for that. Until then, if you have any email questions, feel free to write me at woodchoppingtime@gmail.com. And as always, keep on dancing.